At 11:43 on a Friday night in the Catalina foothills, a doorbell camera captured something that investigators would spend weeks trying to understand. A figure. Male. Roughly 5 to 9. 5 to 10. Average build. Nothing about him that screams dangerous. Nothing about him that screams professional, either. He's wearing a basic ski mask, the kind you'd find in a clearance bin at any sporting goods store. A simple holster sits on his hip. On his back, an Ozark Trail backpack. The kind you'd grab off a shelf at Walmart for a weekend hike. On his hands, black nitrile gloves, the kind you'd buy in bulk from Amazon. None of this gear is specialized. None of it is tactical. None of it suggests someone who has done this before. And yet, what this person did next was not random. It was not impulsive. It was not a crime of opportunity. Before entering the home, the figure paused at the doorbell camera. He didn't avoid it. He didn't duck beneath it. He didn't seem surprised by it at all. Instead, he reached forward and tapped the lens deliberately, almost casually before covering it entirely. That single gesture tells us something. He knew the camera was there. He knew where it was positioned, and he made a conscious decision not to destroy it, but to obscure it. That's not panic. That's preparation. Within minutes, portions of the home's broader surveillance system went dark. Not all of it, just enough. And sometime between that moment and the following morning, 73-year-old Nancy Guthrie vanished from her home. No forced entry that's been made public. No signs of a prolonged struggle reported to the media. Just blood confirmed to be hers, and an absence where a person used to be. Nancy Guthrie is a mother, a grandmother, a retired schoolteacher who spent decades shaping young minds in Tucson, Arizona. She is also the mother of Savannah Guthrie, co-anchor of NBC's Today Show, a detail that launched this case into the national spotlight within hours. But here's what matters more than any headline. As of the recording of this video, Nancy Guthrie has not been found. No arrest has been made. And the person on that doorbell camera, the one with the discount ski mask and the Walmart backpack, has not been identified. The FBI has posted a $100,000 reward. Multiple agencies are working the case. Tips have poured in from across the country. And still, nothing. So today, we're going to do what this channel exists to do. We're going to walk through every verified detail of this case, the timeline, the evidence, the footage, the theories, and we're going to ask the questions that haven't been answered yet. Because someone out there knows who was behind that mask. If you have any information regarding the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, contact the FBI's tip line at 1-800-CALL-FBI. You do not need to give your name. You just need to give what you know. Before we go any further into what happened on the night of January 31st, we need to talk about who Nancy Guthrie is. Not as a headline, not as a name attached to a famous daughter, as a person. Because that's what gets lost in cases like this. The moment a story hits national news, the victim becomes a plot point, a catalyst for debate, a name people type into search bars between their morning coffee and their commute. And if we're not careful, if we don't stop and anchor ourselves in the reality of who this woman is, then we become part of that problem. So let's slow down. Nancy Guthrie spent the better part of her adult life as a schoolteacher in Tucson, Arizona. For decades, she showed up to classrooms and did the kind of work that doesn't make the news, the kind that shapes people quietly, over time, in ways they don't fully appreciate until years later. If you've ever had a teacher who made you feel like you mattered, you understand the kind of impact we're talking about. That was her career. That was her daily life. After retiring, Nancy settled into a home in the Catalina foothills, a residential community nestled against the Santa Catalina Mountains on the northern edge of Tucson. It's the kind of neighborhood that feels removed from the chaos of a city. Quiet streets, desert landscaping, homes spaced far enough apart that you know your neighbors but you're not on top of them. The kind of place people choose specifically because it feels safe. Nancy raised multiple children, among them Savannah Guthrie, who would go on to become one of the most recognizable faces in American broadcast journalism. But Nancy's world was not defined by her daughter's career. She was a grandmother. She was active in her community. She was, by every account that's been made public, a woman living a full and quiet life in a place she had chosen to call home. And this is where we need to introduce a term that matters for this case. In the state of Arizona, a vulnerable adult is legally defined as an individual who is elderly or otherwise unable to protect themselves from abuse, neglect, or exploitation due to age, physical condition, or mental impairment. Nancy Guthrie, at 73 years old and living alone, falls within the parameters that law enforcement and social services use when assessing risk to individuals in this category. This isn't a label meant to diminish anyone. It's a legal framework, and it matters because it directly influences how law enforcement prioritizes and investigates a case. When a vulnerable adult goes missing under circumstances that suggest foul play, the response protocol escalates. Resources are deployed faster. Federal agencies get involved sooner. The assumption shifts from, "this person may have left voluntarily," to, "this person may be in immediate danger." That shift happened quickly in Nancy's case, very quickly. But on the evening of January 31st, none of that machinery had been activated yet. On that evening, Nancy Guthrie was simply a retired school teacher arriving home after spending time with family. She was dropped off at her residence by her son-in-law, Tommaso Cioni. And what happened in the hours that followed would set off one of the most closely watched missing persons investigations in recent memory. Let's build this timeline piece by piece, because in cases like this, minutes matter, and the minutes we're about to walk through are the ones investigators have been pulling apart ever since. On the evening of Friday, January 31st, 2026, Nancy Guthrie spent time with family. At some point that evening, her son-in-law, Tommaso Cioni, who is married to one of Nancy's daughters, drove her home to her residence in the Catalina foothills. The exact time of that drop-off has not been made public with precision, but what we know from reporting and law enforcement statements places Nancy arriving home sometime in the late evening hours. Cioni dropped her off. She went inside. He left. That, as far as the public record is concerned, is the last confirmed sighting of Nancy Guthrie by someone who knew her. Now, let's talk about what the camera saw. At 11:43 p.m., Nancy's doorbell camera activated. The footage shows a figure approaching the front of the residence. Male, approximately 5'9" to 5'10", average build. He's wearing a ski mask, a holster, an Ozark Trail backpack, and black nitrile gloves. He does not rush. He does not hesitate. He walks toward the camera with what multiple analysts have described as a calm, measured pace. There is no visible moment of hesitation, no looking over the shoulder, no scanning the street for witnesses. He approaches the camera. He taps the lens. Then he covers it. And here's where the timeline becomes critical and where the questions begin to multiply. Between the moment Cioni dropped Nancy off and the moment this figure appeared on camera, there is a window. Investigators have not publicly disclosed the exact duration of that window, but based on available reporting, we're looking at a gap of roughly 41 minutes, maybe slightly more, maybe slightly less, but somewhere in that range. 41 minutes. That's the space between Nancy is home safe and someone in a mask is at her door. Now, 41 minutes is not a long time, but it's not nothing either. It's long enough for Nancy to have settled in, changed clothes, checked her phone, made a cup of tea, gone through whatever routine a person goes through when they get home late on a Friday night. It's long enough for the house to have gone quiet. It's also long enough for someone to have been watching, waiting, timing their approach, for the moment the house went still. And that's one of the first major questions this case raises. Did the person on that camera know when Nancy would be home? Did they know she had just been dropped off? Were they watching the house or were they watching the family? This is a good moment to talk about something that's become central to modern investigations, and central to this one. Nancy's home was equipped with a doorbell camera and a broader surveillance system. That system captured the suspect's approach, but portions of that system were disabled shortly after the figure appeared on camera. Not all of it. Portions. This tells investigators two things. First, the suspect had at least a basic understanding of the home's security layout. They knew what to neutralize and what they could afford to leave running. Second, and this is important, the footage that does exist was preserved precisely because the suspect didn't get to everything. The doorbell camera captured those critical seconds before it was obscured. Now, when law enforcement arrived and recognized the circumstances, a missing, vulnerable adult, blood at the scene, evidence of an intruder, they were operating under what's legally known as exigent circumstances. This is a legal doctrine that allows law enforcement to act without a warrant when there is an immediate threat to life or an imminent risk of evidence being destroyed. It's what allows officers to enter a home, seize devices, and access security footage without waiting for a judge's signature. In this case, exigent circumstances meant that investigators could move fast, and they did. The doorbell footage, the state of the home, the blood evidence, all of it was secured in those early hours. But the 41-minute window remained. And what happened inside that window, inside that house, between the moment Nancy walked through her front door and the moment a masked figure appeared on her porch, is something only two people know for certain. One of them is Nancy. The other one was wearing a mask. Someone tried to reach Nancy Guthrie. The specific details of who made that first attempt and at what time have not been fully disclosed. But what has been reported is this: Nancy did not answer. She did not respond to calls. She did not respond to messages. And for a woman described by her family as consistent, reliable, and reachable, that silence was immediate cause for alarm. A welfare check was initiated. When individuals arrived at Nancy's home, whether family, law enforcement, or both, what they found was not an empty house. It was not a home that looked like someone had simply stepped out for the morning. It was a scene. Blood was present, not a trace amount, enough to be visible, enough to be concerning, enough for investigators to later confirm, through forensic testing, that it belonged to Nancy Guthrie. But Nancy herself was not there. No body, no note, no indication of where she had gone or how she had left. Her vehicle has not been reported as missing. Her phone, the device that might have told investigators exactly what happened and when, has not been discussed publicly in terms of its location or status. What was left behind was an absence, and evidence that something violent had occurred in the space where that absence now sat. This is the moment where the nature of the case shifted. Up until this point, you could construct a scenario, however unlikely, where Nancy had left on her own, where there was some benign explanation, where the figure on the doorbell camera was unrelated, where the blood had an innocent origin. But the totality of what investigators found that Saturday morning closed those doors one by one. A masked intruder on camera, a disabled security system, blood confirmed to belong to the homeowner, and the homeowner gone. This was not a missing persons case. This was a criminal investigation. And the machinery that activates in moments like this, the machinery we talked about earlier, the protocols that escalate when a vulnerable adult is believed to be in danger, all of it engaged. The Pima County Sheriff's Office responded, and within a very short window of time, the case was no longer local. The Federal Bureau of Investigation entered the picture, not in an advisory capacity, not as a supporting agency lending resources from a distance. The FBI took an active role in this investigation from the early stages, a decision that reflects the severity of what was found inside that home and the profile of the individuals involved. By Saturday afternoon, Nancy Guthrie's name was moving through newsrooms across the country. By Saturday evening, the Catalina foothills, that quiet, safe, removed community at the base of the mountains, had become the center of a national investigation. What followed was not a slow build. It was an immediate, full-scale mobilization, the kind of response that tells you, before anyone says a word at a press conference, that the people running this investigation believe they are working against a clock. The Pima County Sheriff's Office and the FBI established a joint command. Search teams were deployed across the surrounding area on foot, by vehicle, and by air. The Catalina foothills and the desert terrain beyond it were gridded and canvassed. K-9 units were brought in. Volunteers were organized and then, notably, pulled back because this was not the kind of search where well-meaning civilians walking through brush was going to be helpful. This was a controlled, methodical operation, and the agencies running it made clear from the outset that they intended to keep it that way. Neighbors were interviewed, not casually, systematically. Investigators went door to door through the surrounding streets, asking the same questions over and over. Did you see anything on the night of January 31st? Did you hear anything? Do you have security cameras? Can we access your footage? In a neighborhood like the Catalina foothills, where homes are spaced apart, where the streets are quiet after dark, where the desert swallows sound, the odds of a neighbor having seen or heard something useful are lower than they would be in a dense urban environment. But investigators canvassed anyway, because in cases like this, you don't skip steps. You don't assume a lead isn't there just because the geography makes it unlikely. And then there was the technology. One of the more striking details to emerge from this investigation was the use of a helicopter-mounted Bluetooth scanner. The purpose: to attempt to detect the signal from Nancy Guthrie's pacemaker. Let that sit for a moment. Nancy has a pacemaker, a medical device implanted in her chest to regulate her heartbeat. Modern pacemakers, like many medical devices, are equipped with Bluetooth low-energy transmitters. These transmitters allow doctors to monitor the device remotely, check battery levels, and assess cardiac data without requiring an in-person visit. It's a feature designed for convenience and medical efficiency. But it also means the device emits a signal, a faint one, a signal with a limited range, but a signal nonetheless. Investigators, working with that knowledge, deployed aerial assets equipped with Bluetooth scanning technology to sweep the areas surrounding Nancy's home and, reportedly, broader zones beyond that. The goal was straightforward. If Nancy was somewhere within range alive, with that pacemaker still functioning, the scanner might pick up the signal. Whether that effort yielded results has not been disclosed publicly. But the fact that it was deployed tells us something about the resources being committed to this case, and the creative lengths investigators are willing to go to. Alongside the Bluetooth operation, the FBI activated its Cellular Analysis Survey Team, known as CAST. This is a specialized unit within the Bureau that focuses on cellular data. What CAST does, in simplified terms, is analyze the movement and activity of cell phones and other wireless devices within a defined geographic area during a defined window of time. Think of it this way. Every phone that was active in or near the Catalina foothills on the night of January 31st left a digital footprint. It connected to cell towers. It pinged. It moved. CAST's job is to collect that data, map it, and identify patterns or anomalies. A phone that appeared in the area and then moved rapidly away from it. A phone that was present but has no registered owner in the neighborhood. A device that went dark at an unusual time. This kind of analysis takes time. It requires subpoenas, coordination with carriers, and painstaking cross-referencing. But it is one of the most powerful tools in modern law enforcement's arsenal, and the fact that CAST was activated early in this investigation tells us the FBI was not waiting to see how things developed. They were moving. If you have any information regarding the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, contact the FBI's tip line at 1-800-CALL-FBI. You do not need to give your name. We've already talked about what the footage shows. Now let's talk about what it tells us. Because since the FBI released images from Nancy Guthrie's doorbell camera, this footage has been analyzed formally and informally by more people than we can count. Law enforcement, security consultants, body language experts, and, inevitably, thousands of people on the internet who believe they can identify the suspect from a grainy nighttime video shot through a doorbell lens. We're going to focus on what the professionals have said, because speculation without foundation isn't analysis, it's noise. Let's start with the gear. The FBI's official description of the suspect places him at approximately 5'9" to 5'10", with an average build. He is wearing a ski mask, dark clothing, a holster on his hip, an Ozark Trail backpack on his back, and black nitrile gloves. Every single item on that list is commercially available, mass-produced, untraceable in any practical sense. The ski mask is not a balaclava favored by tactical units. It's a basic, pullover winter mask. The holster is simple, not a custom rig. The backpack is a budget-line product sold at Walmart locations nationwide. The gloves are the kind purchased in boxes of 100. Security analysts who have commented publicly on this case have used a specific word repeatedly: amateurish. Not in the sense that the person didn't know what they were doing, but in the sense that the equipment suggests someone operating outside of any professional framework. This is not the loadout of someone with military training. This is not the kit of someone who has done contract work. This is someone who assembled their gear from retail stores, likely with cash, likely without leaving a meaningful purchase trail. And that, paradoxically, makes them harder to track. Specialized equipment can be traced. Custom gear has manufacturers, distributors, limited customer bases. A ski mask from a clearance bin has none of that. Now let's talk about how the suspect moves. Forensic gait analysis is a discipline within forensic science that examines the way a person walks, their stride length, cadence, posture, arm swing, foot placement, and any asymmetries or irregularities in their movement. It has been used in criminal investigations for decades, though its admissibility in court varies by jurisdiction and remains a subject of debate within the forensic community. What gait analysis can do, when performed by a qualified expert using sufficient footage, is narrow a suspect pool. It can identify characteristics that are difficult to disguise: a slight limp, a particular hip rotation, a tendency to lead with one shoulder. These are patterns embedded in a person's musculature and skeletal structure. You can change your clothes, you can cover your face, but changing the way you walk, truly changing it, not just affecting a temporary alteration, is extraordinarily difficult. In the Guthrie footage, the suspect's gait has drawn significant attention. Online communities have dissected every frame, debating height, weight, stride pattern, and even the suspect's apparent comfort level on the property. Some of that analysis has been thoughtful. Much of it has not. What we can say, based on the footage that's been made public, is this: the suspect does not appear rushed. Their movement toward the camera is steady and deliberate. There is no visible hesitation at the threshold of the property, no moment where they stop, reassess, or appear to be orienting themselves. They move like someone who knows where they are going. That observation has fueled one of the central questions in this case, a question we'll return to when we discuss theories. Did this person have prior familiarity with the property? The way they approached the camera directly, without searching for it, suggests they knew its location. The way they moved through the space suggests they had been there before, or had studied the layout in advance. Neither possibility is comforting. Both carry implications that investigators are almost certainly exploring. In the days following Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, something happened that added an entirely new dimension to this case and an entirely new set of questions. Ransom notes began to surface. Not one, multiple, sent not to the family directly but to media outlets. The notes demanded payment in cryptocurrency in exchange for Nancy's safe return. Let's pause here, because the way ransom demands are delivered tells you almost as much as what they say. Sending a ransom note to a victim's family is direct. It establishes a line of communication. It creates a channel for negotiation. It suggests the sender wants a transaction money for a person and is willing to engage in the back and forth required to make that transaction happen. Sending ransom notes to media outlets is something else entirely. It's performative. It introduces a public audience into what should be, from the kidnapper's perspective, a private negotiation. It creates pressure on the family, on law enforcement, on the public, but it does not create a clear path to resolution. It raises a question that investigators have almost certainly been asking since the first note appeared. Is this person actually holding Nancy Guthrie, or are they exploiting her disappearance? Because that happens, more often than people realize. When a high-profile disappearance hits the news, opportunists emerge. People who have no connection to the crime, no knowledge of the victim's whereabouts, and no ability to deliver on any promise they make, but who see an opening to extract money from a desperate family or a frenzied public. The content of the ransom notes has not been fully disclosed. What has been reported is that they demanded cryptocurrency, a detail that warrants its own discussion. Cryptocurrency Bitcoin, in most cases, though other currencies are sometimes specified, has become the preferred payment method in ransom scenarios for a reason that is both simple and, for law enforcement, deeply frustrating. It is designed to be difficult to trace. When a ransom is demanded in cash, investigators can mark bills, track serial numbers, and monitor the physical exchange. When a ransom is demanded via wire transfer, there is a bank, a routing number, and a paper trail. But when a ransom is demanded in cryptocurrency, the payment moves through a decentralized network. There is no bank. There is no central authority. The wallet address receiving the funds is pseudonymous, tied to a string of characters, not a name. That said, cryptocurrency is not as anonymous as it once was. Blockchain analysis, the process of tracing transactions across the public ledger that underpins most cryptocurrencies, has advanced significantly. Law enforcement agencies, including the FBI, have dedicated units and private sector partners capable of following cryptocurrency through multiple wallets, identifying patterns, and, in some cases, linking transactions to real-world identities. So, demanding crypto is not a guarantee of anonymity, but it is a barrier. And it is a barrier that buys time, which, depending on the sender's actual intentions, may be the entire point. As of the recording of this video, no proof of life has accompanied any of the ransom notes. No photograph, no video, no verifiable detail that only someone with access to Nancy would know. The validity of these notes remains unconfirmed by law enforcement, and that absence, the absence of proof, is perhaps the loudest detail of all. Either the person sending these notes has Nancy and is choosing not to prove it, or they don't have her and can't. Neither answer brings her home. In the days following Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, investigators recovered a pair of black nitrile gloves near her residence. That sentence sounds simple. It is not, because gloves are, by their very nature, designed to prevent the transfer of biological material. That is their purpose. That is why the suspect wore them. When you put on nitrile gloves before committing a crime, you are making a deliberate choice to leave nothing of yourself behind: no fingerprints, no skin cells, no sweat, no DNA. But here's what most people don't understand about gloves. They are not perfect. Nitrile gloves can tear. They can be punctured by sharp surfaces without the wearer noticing. They can be contaminated on the exterior by contact with the wearer's skin before they were put on, a smudge of sweat on the wrist, a touch to the face before pulling them down fully. And critically, the interior of a glove, the surface pressed against the wearer's hands for the duration of whatever they were doing, is a potential reservoir of DNA. Sweat, skin cells, oil, all of it accumulates on the inside of a glove during wear. And when that glove is removed and discarded, all of that material goes with it. The gloves recovered near Nancy's home were submitted for forensic DNA analysis. As of the recording of this video, the results of that analysis have not been made public, but the fact that the gloves were recovered and that they were found near the residence rather than miles away raises its own questions. Why were they discarded so close to the scene? Was it carelessness, haste, or did the suspect believe that gloves, having served their purpose, posed no further risk? If it was the latter, they may have been wrong. Beyond the gloves, law enforcement has executed multiple search warrants in connection with this case. The specific locations and targets of those warrants have not been fully disclosed, but reporting indicates that investigators have conducted searches and, in at least some instances, detained individuals for questioning. Detained, not arrested. That distinction matters. A detention is temporary. It means law enforcement has enough reason to hold someone and ask questions, but not enough to file charges. It is a tool, a way to gather information, apply pressure, and assess whether a person of interest warrants further investigation. People are detained and released in criminal investigations every day. It does not mean they are suspects. It does not mean they are guilty. It means investigators had questions and believed those individuals might have answers. What we do not know is how many people have been detained, who they are, or what information, if any, those detentions produced. Law enforcement has kept this investigation tight, controlled. The flow of information to the public has been deliberate and measured, which is consistent with a case where investigators believe premature disclosure could compromise their progress. And then there is the DNA. If the gloves yield a usable DNA profile, that profile will be run against existing databases, CODIS, the FBI's combined DNA index system, being the primary one. If there's a match, investigators will have a name. If there isn't, they'll have a profile, a genetic fingerprint waiting for a face to attach to. Either way, those gloves may end up being the single most important piece of physical evidence in this case. And whoever discarded them near Nancy Guthrie's home may have left behind the one thing they were trying so hard not to: themselves. This is the part of the video where we lay out the competing theories, and we need to be clear about something before we begin. None of what follows is accusation. None of it is conclusion. These are frameworks, ways of organizing the evidence that exists and testing it against different scenarios. That's what responsible analysis looks like. You take what you know, you hold it up against what could be true, and you see where it holds and where it breaks. 3 theories. Let's walk through them. Theory 1. Targeted kidnapping for ransom. This is the theory that the ransom notes, if legitimate, would support. Under this framework, Nancy Guthrie was selected deliberately not because of who she is, but because of who her daughter is. Savannah Guthrie is one of the most visible figures in American media. Her salary is public. Her profile is enormous. And her mother, a 73-year-old woman living alone in a quiet Arizona neighborhood, represents a softer target than someone surrounded by the security infrastructure that comes with national fame. Under this theory, the suspect identified Nancy as a point of leverage. The plan was to take her, hold her, and extract payment from a family with the means and the motivation to pay. What supports it? The ransom notes exist. Multiple notes, demanding cryptocurrency. The suspect came prepared. Mask, gloves, backpack, holster. This was not someone who stumbled onto the property. The approach was planned. The camera was addressed. The security system was partially disabled. All of this suggests premeditation with a specific objective. What challenges it? No proof of life has been provided. In a genuine kidnapping for ransom, proof of life is the currency of negotiation. It is the one thing that gives the kidnapper leverage. Without it, the family has no reason to pay, and the kidnapper has no way to demonstrate they can deliver on their end of the transaction. The absence of proof of life either means the sender is withholding it strategically, which is unusual and counterproductive, or they don't have it to give. Additionally, the notes were sent to media outlets rather than the family, which deviates from the operational logic of a ransom-driven abduction. Theory 2. Burglary gone wrong. Under this framework, the suspect's original intent was not to take Nancy. It was to take what was inside her home. The target was the property, not the person. But something went wrong. Nancy was home, perhaps unexpectedly, perhaps not, and the situation escalated. What supports it? The gear. Security analysts have described the suspect's equipment as amateurish budget items, commercially available, nothing tactical. That profile is more consistent with a burglar than a kidnapper. Burglars operate on the assumption that no one is home. They bring tools for entry and bags for carrying stolen goods. The Ozark Trail backpack fits that profile. The holster suggests the suspect was armed, which could indicate they anticipated the possibility of confrontation but hoped to avoid it. What challenges it? The camera tap. That single gesture reaching forward and deliberately tapping the doorbell camera lens before covering it is not the behavior of someone who expected an empty house. It is the behavior of someone who knew they were being recorded and wanted to demonstrate control over that fact. A burglar who believes no one is home doesn't engage with the camera. They avoid it or ignore it. This person acknowledged it. That suggests a level of awareness and intent that goes beyond a property crime. Additionally, the partial disabling of the broader surveillance system indicates advanced knowledge of the home's security layout, knowledge that a random burglar is unlikely to possess. Theory 3. Someone who knew the property. This is the theory that generates the most discomfort, and it should, because under this framework, the suspect was not a stranger. They were someone who had been to Nancy's home before, someone who knew the layout, someone who knew where the cameras were, someone who knew Nancy's routines or had access to someone who did. What supports it? The suspect's movement on camera, no hesitation, no searching, a direct line to the doorbell camera with no visible moment of orientation. The partial disabling of the surveillance system, not all of it, just specific components, suggests knowledge of what was there and what needed to be neutralized. The timing arriving within a narrow window after Nancy was dropped off suggests awareness of her movements that evening. What challenges it? Nancy's family, including her son-in-law Tommaso Cioni, have been publicly cleared by law enforcement and have cooperated fully with the investigation. If the suspect had a personal connection to Nancy or her property, that connection has not been identified publicly. And familiarity with a property does not require a personal relationship. It can be acquired through surveillance, research, or information obtained from a third party. 3 theories, each one supported by some evidence, each one challenged by other evidence, and none of them, not one, has been confirmed or eliminated by law enforcement. That's where this case sits, in the space between what we know and what we don't, in the gap between evidence and explanation. If you have information that could help resolve that gap, contact the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI. Every tip is reviewed. Every detail matters. There is a version of this story that exists entirely in headlines and hashtags. A version where Nancy Guthrie's disappearance is a mystery to be solved, a puzzle to be debated, a case to be cracked by armchair detectives between scrolling sessions. And then there is the version that exists inside a family. That version doesn't have a comment section. Savannah Guthrie has been public about her mother's disappearance, not because she wanted to be, but because the nature of her career and the scale of this case left her with no alternative. When your mother vanishes and your face is already on television 5 mornings a week, privacy is not an option. The story finds you whether you invite it or not. In the days and weeks following Nancy's disappearance, Savannah and her siblings made direct, public appeals for their mother's return. These were not scripted media moments. They were raw. They were specific. They were the words of children, adult children, yes, but children nonetheless asking for their mother back. Savannah addressed the public. She addressed potential witnesses, and she addressed directly whoever took her mother, asking them to let her go, to do the right thing, to end this. Those appeals were carried by every major news outlet in the country. They were shared millions of times, and they did what they were designed to do. They kept Nancy's face in the public consciousness. They kept the pressure on. They reminded people that behind the investigation, behind the theories, behind the footage and the forensics, there is a family sitting in a room somewhere, waiting for a phone to ring. As of the recording of this video, this is what we know and what we don't. Nancy Guthrie has not been found. She has not been heard from. No verified proof of life has surfaced since the night of January 31st, 2026. No arrest has been made. The individual captured on Nancy's doorbell camera male, approximately 5 to 9 to 5 to 10, average build, wearing a ski mask, holster, Ozark Trail backpack, and black nitrile gloves, has not been publicly identified. The ransom notes sent to media outlets remain unverified. No proof of life accompanied them. Their origin has not been disclosed. Whether law enforcement considers them credible, opportunistic, or something else entirely has not been stated publicly. The black nitrile gloves recovered near Nancy's residence are undergoing DNA analysis. The results of that analysis have not been released. If a usable profile is obtained, it will be run against federal databases. That process takes time. It is not instant, but it is thorough. Nancy's family, including her son-in-law, Tommaso Cioni, have been cleared as suspects. They have cooperated fully with the investigation. There is no public indication of any familial involvement. The FBI and the Pima County Sheriff's Office continue to work the case jointly. Search warrants have been executed. Individuals have been detained and questioned. The FBI's Cellular Analysis Survey team is processing data from the night of Nancy's disappearance. The helicopter-mounted Bluetooth scanner operation targeting Nancy's pacemaker signal has been conducted. The outcomes of these efforts have not been made public. The FBI has increased the reward for information leading to Nancy's recovery to $100,000. That is where this case stands. Active, open, unresolved. There are people working this case every day who know more than what has been shared with the public. That is not a failure of transparency, it is a function of an ongoing investigation. Information is withheld not to frustrate the public, but to protect the integrity of the case and to preserve the ability to verify the authenticity of future tips and confessions. What the public can do, what you can do, is simple. Remember her face, remember her name, and if you know something, say something. We started this video with a figure on a doorbell camera, a person in a ski mask, walking calmly toward a lens they already knew was there. A tap, a cover, and then darkness. We end it the same way. Because nothing about that image has been resolved. The hand that reached toward that camera belongs to someone. Someone with a name. Someone with a daily routine. Someone who, right now, is living their life while Nancy Guthrie is not living hers. That person bought that ski mask somewhere. They bought that backpack somewhere. They drove to or from that neighborhood somehow. They exist in the world not as a shadow on a grainy video, but as a real person who interacts with other real people. Someone has seen their face. Someone may have heard them say something they shouldn't have. Someone may have noticed a change in their behavior in the days after January 31st. A nervousness, an absence, a sudden need to leave town. That someone might be watching this video right now. We covered a lot of ground today. The timeline, the 41-minute window, the crime scene, the multi-agency investigation, the surveillance footage, and what it reveals about the suspect's preparation and familiarity with the property, the ransom notes and their unverified origins, the gloves and the DNA they may contain. 3 competing theories, none confirmed, none eliminated. A family fighting to keep their mother's name in the light, and an investigation that remains active, open, and unresolved. But none of that, not the theories, not the forensics, not the analysis, none of it matters as much as the simple fact at the center of this case. A 73-year-old woman is missing. A retired school teacher. A mother. A grandmother. A person who was in her home on a Friday night and was not there by Saturday morning. Her name is Nancy Guthrie, and she deserves to be found. If you have any information, anything at all regarding the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, contact the FBI's tip line at 1-800-CALL-FBI. The reward for information leading to a recovery is $100,000. You do not need to give your name. You just need to give what you know.